The day my father fired me, he was wearing the cufflinks I bought him for his 65th birthday. I noticed that first, before anything else, because that's the kind of detail your brain latches onto when everything else is collapsing. Gold, engraved with his initials. I'd saved 3 months for those. He didn't even glance at me when he said it. Just kept his eyes on the table like I was a leasing problem he was finally resolving. "We're giving the company to Brent," he said. "The board voted. It's done. My name is Sasha. And I had spent 11 years building a biotech formula that was about to change the way chronic inflammation was treated in the human body. 11 years of failed batches of 3 a.m. Lab sessions of choosing work over relationships, vacations, and sleep. And I'd done it inside my family's company. A mid-sized pharmaceutical firm my grandfather started from nothing, and my father turned into something worth, at that point, approximately $2.4 billion. My brother Brent had been in the building for 18 months. He had an MBA from a school that accepted him because our father made a donation. He once asked me if the centrifuge was the spinny thing. I'm not exaggerating. I was there. My mother was seated to my father's left. She had her reading glasses on like we were discussing quarterly projections, not my entire career. When I finally found my voice and asked, because I had to ask, I had to hear it out loud, "So you sold my formula?" She laughed, not a nervous laugh, a real one. Short and sharp, like I'd said something embarrassingly naive. "We sold our company, Sasha. The formula belongs to the company. Always has." I want to tell you I said something powerful in that moment. I didn't. I just sat there while the room reorganized itself around me. My father's attorney, a man named Gregory, who I had met at approximately 40 family dinners, slid a manila folder across the table. Severance agreement. NDA. A number that was meant to feel generous and instead felt like the price they'd decided my silence was worth. What they didn't know, what none of them had ever bothered to find out, was that I had never actually transferred the core compound patent to the company. Let me explain how that happened, because it matters. 3 years into development, when the formula was still theoretical and my father was calling it Sasha's little science project at dinner parties, I had filed an independent provisional patent under my own name. My attorney at the time, a woman named Dr. Renata Voss, who I'd met through a Women in Science networking event, had advised me to do it. "You're an employee," she told me, "but this is something you developed before formal company authorization. Document everything. File early. Keep your name on it." I had. I'd renewed it. I'd let the corporate patent filing proceed alongside it, but the foundational compound, the one without which the rest of the formula was inert, that was mine. I had never lied about it. I had also never been asked directly. In 11 years, not one person in that building had ever said, "Sasha, do you hold any independent IP related to your research here?" They hadn't asked because they hadn't thought to, because I was the quiet one. The one who stayed late and didn't network and wore her lab coat to board meetings and made everyone vaguely uncomfortable with how much she actually knew. I was not Brent. I was not the story they wanted to tell. Gregory was still talking when I noticed him, a man I didn't recognize sitting at the far end of the conference table. Slim, dark suit, tablet in front of him, untouched. He hadn't said a word since I walked in. I asked who he was. Gregory paused. My father looked for the first time that afternoon, slightly uncertain. The man stood up. "My name is Arthur Kessler. I'm representing the acquiring firm." He looked at me, not at my father, not at Gregory, at me, and said, "Before this meeting concludes, there's a matter of patent precedence we need to address." That's when I understood he already knew. Renata had reached out to the acquiring company's legal team 2 weeks prior. She had sent documentation. They had reviewed it quietly while the deal was being finalized, and they had said nothing to my father's team because, legally, they weren't required to. The acquisition was now technically in jeopardy. The core compound patent, the one that justified the majority of the $2.4 billion valuation, had a competing claim. Mine. My father's face did something I had never seen it do in 67 years of his life. It went completely still. My mother took off her reading glasses. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry, though I had cried, alone, the night before, in my car in the parking garage for about 20 minutes before pulling myself together. In that room, I was calm the way a room is calm after everyone has finally stopped pretending. I told Gregory I would not be signing the severance agreement. I told Arthur Kessler I was available for a separate conversation at his firm's convenience. I picked up my bag. And I thanked my father for 11 years of clarity. What followed over the next 6 weeks was not pretty, but I'm not going to pretend I didn't watch some of it with something close to relief. The acquisition stalled. The acquiring firm opened independent negotiations with me directly. My father's attorneys sent 3 increasingly hostile letters that Renata handled, without me having to read most of them. Brent gave a statement to a business publication about family tensions that made him look exactly as uninformed as he was. My mother called twice. I didn't answer. Not out of cruelty. I just didn't have anything left to perform for her. I ended up licensing the core compound to the acquiring firm independently, on terms Renata negotiated over the course of a month. The family company's sale proceeded at a significantly reduced valuation. My father did not get the number he was expecting. I don't know what he told Brent. I genuinely stopped needing to know. There are people who will tell you that story isn't about revenge, that I just protected myself, that any reasonable person would have done the same, that the law simply worked the way it was supposed to. Maybe. But I know what it felt like to sit in that conference room while my mother laughed. I know what it felt like to be handed a severance check like a receipt for something they thought they'd already spent. And I know what it felt like to stand up and leave without explaining myself. That's the part they never modeled for me. That walking away cleanly with your work protected and your name intact is its own kind of answer. I didn't destroy them. I had been quietly, for years, the only thing standing between them and exactly what they got. The quiet ones always know more than you think. And the mistake, the only mistake that ever really matters, is assuming that someone who doesn't fight loudly isn't ready to fight at all.